Welcome to our channel. Today, you are about to embark on an extraordinary journey back to one of the most pivotal moments in world history, the westward conquest of the Byzantine Empire by the Ottoman Turks. Whether you are a history enthusiast, a curious learner, or someone captivated by stories of empires rising and falling, you are in the right place. Over the next series of episodes, we will uncover the dramatic events, powerful personalities, and fierce battles that shaped the end of the Byzantine Empire and ushered in a new era for the world. Through compelling narratives, in-depth character profiles, and vivid visual storytelling, we will bring to life the last days of Constantinople, the ambitions of Sultan Mehmed II, and the final stand of Emperor Constantine XI. From political intrigue and military strategies to the daily lives of soldiers and citizens, our goal is to provide you with a rich, immersive experience. So, get comfortable, subscribe to our channel, and join us as we relive the siege, the heroism, and the legacy of westward. Let's discover together how this dramatic conquest forever changed the course of history. Let's begin. In the waning years of the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople stood as a proud, if beleaguered, bastion of Christian civilization. Once the capital of a vast empire, by westward its glory had faded, and its territory had shrunk to little more than the city itself, surrounded by encroaching Ottoman lands. The people of Constantinople lived in uneasy anticipation, knowing that the threat of invasion grew with every passing day. Emperor Constantine XI Palaiologos, weary yet determined, surveyed the ancient walls, aware that they were the last barrier between his world and the relentless ambitions of the Ottomans. Far to the east, Sultan Mehmed II, a young but formidable leader, had set his gaze upon the city, driven by a dream of conquest and empire. Within the city, life carried on as usual, but the specter of war loomed over every marketplace and church. Nobles debated strategies, merchants worried about their fortunes, and ordinary citizens whispered prayers for deliverance. Even as the setting sun cast golden light upon Hagia Sophia's domes, shadows lengthened across the streets, a silent warning of what was to come. The world was poised on the brink of a cataclysm, and Constantinople's fate would soon be decided. In Edirne, the heart of Ottoman power, Sultan Mehmed II was consumed by one vision, the conquest of Constantinople. Only 30 years old, Mehmed was both a scholar and a warrior, relentless in his quest to claim the city that had eluded so many before him. Surrounded by advisors, generals, and architects, he pored over ancient maps and military treatises, determined to break the fabled walls of Theodosius. His court buzzed with activity as he dispatched envoys, recruited soldiers, and commissioned powerful, new weapons. For Mehmed, this was more than a campaign. It was destiny. The Sultan believed that capturing Constantinople would fulfill a prophecy and cement his place in history as Mehmed the Conqueror. He inspired loyalty among his followers and fear among his enemies. As he addressed his council, his words revealed both youthful confidence and a deep understanding of the monumental task ahead. The Ottoman army grew day by day, swelling with soldiers from across the empire. Smiths and engineers toiled to create mighty cannons, while scouts brought news of Byzantine defenses. Mehmed's ambitions would reshape the world, but for now, the city on the Bosphorus remained unconquered, a jewel waiting to be seized. Emperor Constantine XI Palaiologos carried the heavy burden of being Byzantium's final ruler. Born into a world of shrinking borders and dwindling hope, Constantine had inherited a city under siege in spirit long before any Ottoman attack. Yet his courage and piety earned him respect, and he remained steadfast, determined to defend Constantinople to his last breath. Constantine moved through the halls of the Blacherney Palace with purpose, rallying his officials and commanders. He wrote desperate appeals for aid to the courts of Europe, hoping for a miracle that might never come. Every decision weighed heavily on him, as each day brought new reports of the gathering Ottoman host. In moments of solitude, Constantine prayed in Hagia Sophia, seeking guidance for the immense task before him. Despite fear and uncertainty, he refused to abandon his people, vowing to stand with them against the coming storm. His leadership would become legend, remembered for its dignity in the face of overwhelming odds. As the chill of early spring settled over the land, the Ottoman Empire began to stir with anticipation. Sultan Mehmed II's decree had gone out to every corner of his vast realm. All able-bodied men were to assemble for the greatest campaign in Ottoman history. From Anatolia and the Balkans, from the fields, mountains, and river valleys, soldiers, engineers, and laborers answered the call. The roads leading to Edirne, the Ottoman capital, were soon clogged with men and supplies. Wagons groaned under the weight of weapons, food, and siege equipment. Horsemen rode ahead, carrying orders and scouting the best routes. In the bustling encampments outside the city, units drilled and banners fluttered in the wind. Mehmed II moved among his troops, inspiring loyalty and awe. He ensured that his commanders, seasoned veterans and ambitious newcomers alike, understood the gravity of the task before them. The Sultan's energy was infectious. The dream of conquering Constantinople had seized the hearts of the men. Special attention was paid to assembling an elite artillery corps, including master engineer Urban, who was designing a massive new cannon. Supply trains were meticulously organized, for Mehmed knew that logistics would be as important as bravery. As the days passed, the vast Ottoman army grew, swelling to more than Ling men. The city of Constantinople, visible across the straits, seemed close and yet impossibly distant. The final preparations were underway. The fate of empires hung in the balance, and every soldier felt history pressing upon his shoulders. Inside the ancient city, Emperor Constantine XI knew that survival depended on preparation. The legendary Theodosian walls, centuries old, had repelled countless invaders, but now they faced their greatest test. With grim determination, Constantine ordered repairs and reinforcements wherever weakness was found. Stonemasons and laborers worked day and night, filling cracks, strengthening towers, and shoring up the moat. Citizens, regardless of rank or wealth, joined the effort, driven by desperation and hope. The clang of hammers echoed from dawn until dusk, a relentless chorus of defiance. Commanders walked the battlements, mapping weak spots and assigning troops to critical positions. Every available weapon, catapults, arrows, Greek fire, was stockpiled for the siege. The small garrison, numbering just lingmen including foreign allies, knew they would be outnumbered, but their resolve was strong. Priests led prayers in Hagia Sophia, asking for divine protection. Nobles debated strategy, and merchants donated supplies. Despite the anxiety that gripped the city, a sense of unity took root. The walls themselves, thick and formidable, seemed to embody the spirit of resistance. Outside, the first scouts reported the growing Ottoman host. Tension mounted with every passing day, but inside Constantinople, the people steeled themselves for the ordeal to come. This was more than a battle for survival. It was a struggle for the soul of Byzantium. Months before the siege began, Sultan Mehmed II ordered a bold new project, the construction of Rumeli Hisar, a mighty fortress on the European side of the Bosphorus. Strategically placed across from the older Anadolu Hisar, the new castle would block all aid to Constantinople from the Black Sea, tightening the Ottoman stranglehold. Mehmed himself oversaw the site, driving his engineers and workers relentlessly. He wanted the fortress built with astonishing speed, knowing that every day counted. Thousands of laborers toiled in shifts, laying stone upon stone, raising towers that seemed to rise overnight. The Sultan's presence motivated the workforce, but also instilled fear. Mehmed brooked no delays. He punished slackers harshly and rewarded excellence with gold. Ottoman engineers marveled at the massive walls and formidable towers taking shape. Ships ferried supplies across the Bosphorus, while soldiers guarded the site against attack. By late summer, Rumeli Hisar loomed over the narrowest point of the strait, his cannons aimed at the waters below. Constantinople's defenders watched helplessly as their last lifeline to the north was cut off. Mehmed's confidence soared. With Rumeli Hisar completed, no ships could reach the city without his leave. The noose around Constantinople tightened, and the final stage of preparation for the great siege was set. Desperate for help, Emperor Constantine XI reached out to every Christian court in Europe. Letters were sent to Rome, Venice, Genoa, and beyond, pleading for aid. He invoked the shared faith of Christendom and the threat posed by Ottoman expansion. Pope Nicholas V responded with sympathy, but the schism between the Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches complicated matters. Many Western rulers were preoccupied with their own conflicts or wary of committing resources to a distant city. Some, like the Doge of Venice, hesitated. Trade with the Ottomans was lucrative, and outright war risked too much. Small groups of volunteers arrived, such as the brave Genoese under Giovanni Giustiniani Longo, but the vast armies Constantine hoped for never materialized. Frustration mounted in the imperial court as hopes for a grand coalition faded. Constantine held councils with his advisors, debating strategy and praying for a miracle. Citizens anxiously watched the horizon for foreign sails, clinging to the rumor of rescue fleets. Yet the Ottomans closed in, and the defenders faced the grim reality: Constantinople would largely have to stand alone. This chapter in the siege is marked by both courage and heartbreak. The city's pleas echoed across Europe, but few answered the call. Among Mehmed II's arsenal, one weapon would become legendary: the great cannon designed by Urban, a master engineer from Hungary. Urban had first offered his services to the Byzantines, but when funds proved lacking, he turned to Mehmed, who gave him everything he needed. The result was a colossal bombard, capable of hurling massive stone balls over a mile. Its creation became a feat of engineering, requiring weeks of labor, specialized molds, and the work of hundreds. When the cannon was finally cast, its transport became an event in itself. Teams of oxen dragged the monstrous weapon overland, accompanied by soldiers, carpenters, and artillery crews. Urban supervised every step, ensuring the barrel was not damaged. Mehmed visited the worksite, his eyes alight with anticipation. The people of Edirne marveled at the sheer size of the weapon, whispering that it would bring down the fabled walls of Constantinople. As the great cannon and its smaller cousins drew near the city, Byzantine scouts watched in horror. This was a new age of warfare, one in which no wall, however ancient, could be considered safe. The stage was set for a siege, unlike any before. As spring advanced, the Bosphorus Strait grew crowded with the rising might of the Ottoman navy. Sultan Mehmed II, determined to besiege Constantinople by land and sea, summoned his admirals to gather ships from across his empire. The docks at Gallipoli and along the Black Sea coast were alive with activity, Shipwrights hammered, sails were mended, and cannons were loaded. Hundreds of war galleys, troop transports, and supply vessels were prepared under the vigilant eyes of Admiral Boltaulu Suleiman Bey. Mehmed knew that controlling the waterways was essential to isolating Constantinople and preventing any hope of relief. Soon, the Ottoman fleet set out, its banners snapping in the wind, oars churning the blue waters toward the Golden Horn. The sight filled Constantinople's defenders with dread. From the city's towers, citizens and soldiers watched the armada approach, understanding that now, escape or outside assistance would be nearly impossible. Byzantine and Genoese ships, few in number, prepared for a desperate defense. On the opposite shore, Mehmed rode along the banks, inspecting the progress and encouraging his men. He ordered the construction of additional floating barriers and planned for the complex operation of dragging ships across land to bypass the great chain that blocked the Golden Horn. The city was now beset on all sides. The Ottoman fleet's arrival signaled that the siege had truly begun, and that no part of Constantinople was beyond Mehmed's reach. Inside the walls of Constantinople, anxiety was mounting. With the Ottoman army and navy both in place, a suffocating tension settled over the city. Emperor Constantine XI worked tirelessly to maintain order and morale, making rounds to the fortifications and personally encouraging the soldiers and volunteers at their posts. Churches were crowded as citizens sought solace. Priests offered prayers, and choirs sang hymns that echoed through the ancient streets. Markets, once bustling, now saw hushed exchanges as supplies dwindled and prices soared. Everyone understood that what little remained had to last for an uncertain siege. Nobles met in the palace to discuss last-ditch diplomatic strategies. Cheaper, even as the mood darkened with the realization that help from the West was unlikely. In the neighborhoods, families prepared for the worst, stockpiling food, reinforcing doors, and whispering stories of past sieges. Foreign mercenaries, Genoese and Venetian, drilled alongside Byzantine troops, forming an uneasy but vital alliance. Commander Giustiniani Longo became a visible figure, his presence lending confidence to the defenders. Outside, the sound of Ottoman drums and the smoke from campfires reminded everyone that the enemy was near. Inside, Constantine tried to project confidence, but the strain showed on his face. The city, once the queen of Christendom, was now a besieged island, her fate hanging by a thread. As the siege lines closed in, the quiet was shattered by the first clashes between Ottoman and Byzantine forces. Ottoman scouts and sappers probed the outer defenses, seeking weak points in the ancient walls. Under cover of darkness, small bands of soldiers attempted to sabotage gates and test the resolve of the defenders. Byzantine archers and crossbowmen posted along the battlements responded with deadly precision. Boiling oil and stones were hurled down upon attackers, and the narrow streets behind the walls became supply routes for reinforcements rushing to repel the incursions. Commander Giustiniani personally led sorties from the gates, surprising Ottoman patrols and capturing prisoners for interrogation. Each night brought fresh alarms, and fires occasionally broke out where Ottoman arrows found their mark. Though the attacks were limited in scale, the psychological toll on both sides was immense. Ottoman soldiers began to respect the defenders' skill and courage, while inside the city, every victory, no matter how small, boosted morale. Sultan Mehmed monitored these early engagements closely, using them to gather intelligence about the city's defenses and the defenders' resolve. For the Byzantines, these skirmishes were proof that the fight for Constantinople had truly begun. One of Constantinople's most formidable defenses was the massive iron chain stretched across the mouth of the Golden Horn. Anchored to the sturdy towers on either side, the chain was designed to prevent enemy ships from entering the protected inner harbor. Byzantine engineers and sailors checked and reinforced the chain, knowing it was crucial to keeping the Ottoman fleet at bay. Patrol boats moved back and forth behind it, and watchtowers kept vigil day and night. On the opposite shore, Ottoman admirals studied the barrier, searching for a way past. Mehmed II considered several options, including forcing the chain, building floating bridges, or even dragging ships overland to bypass it entirely. A feat that had never before been attempted on such a scale. Inside the city, the chain became a symbol of hope. Children played near its shadow, and priests blessed it in solemn ceremonies. But everyone knew that if the chain fell, the city would be exposed to attack from both land and sea. As the siege continued, tension mounted around the Golden Horn. The Ottomans began assembling specialized equipment and plotting, while the Byzantines did all they could to strengthen their ancient barrier. The fate of the harbor, and possibly the city itself, depended on a length of iron and the courage of those who guarded it. As the siege intensified, Sultan Mehmed II decided to offer the defenders a final chance to surrender. Under a flag of truce, Ottoman envoys approached the city walls and delivered a formal ultimatum to Emperor Constantine XI. The message was clear: if the city yielded peacefully, lives and property would be spared, and the emperor would be given lands elsewhere. If not, the city would face destruction. Inside Constantinople, the mood was tense as Constantine summoned his council to discuss the ultimatum. Some, exhausted by fear and hardship, argued for surrender, but the majority, led by Constantine himself, chose defiance. The emperor replied that he was entrusted with the city and would never willingly abandon it. Word of the ultimatum spread quickly among the citizens and defenders. So, priests urged faith and perseverance, while soldiers and mercenaries pledged to fight to the last. On the Ottoman side, Mehmed prepared for total war, knowing there would be no turning back. The refusal of the ultimatum marked a turning point. Both sides understood that the coming struggle would be fought without mercy. The siege of Constantinople was no longer a matter of negotiation. It was a fight for survival, glory, and the future of empires. With the main siege in full swing, both Ottomans and Byzantines turned to the cloak of darkness for advantage. Under moonless skies, select bands of Ottoman sappers crept toward the city's outer walls, their aim to undermine fortifications, cut water lines, and set fires in vulnerable places. Carrying shovels, torches, and bundles of rags soaked in oil, these men risked everything for a chance to weaken the defenses. Inside the city, Constantine XI organized night patrols of archers and sentries who watched and listened for the slightest movement. Whenever a shadow moved at the base of the walls, alarms sounded and defenders rushed to repel the intruders. Sometimes, Byzantine soldiers counterattacked, leaping from sally ports to surprise the sappers and capture prisoners. These nightly clashes were intense and terrifying. The screams of the wounded echoed over the battlements, while fire arrows arced across the sky. Urban's great cannon was sometimes fired in the darkness, sending shockwaves through the Ottoman camps and illuminating the night with brief, terrible flashes. Though most raids resulted in little permanent damage, the psychological strain on both sides grew. The Byzantines knew that even a single successful act of sabotage could doom them, while Ottomans realized that the defenders were far from broken. Night after night, the city held its breath, every shadow a potential threat. every quiet moment a prelude to alarm. At the heart of Constantinople's resistance stood Giovanni Giustiniani Longo. At the heart of stood Giovanni Giustiniani Longo, the Genoese commander whose arrival with a contingent of seasoned soldiers brought new hope to the defenders. Tall, imposing, and skilled in the art of siege warfare, Giustiniani quickly earned the respect of both Byzantine and foreign troops. Constantine XI gave Giustiniani command of the crucial sections of the Theodosian walls, trusting his expertise in defense and discipline. Giustiniani drilled his men relentlessly, enforcing strict routines and personally inspecting every post. His methods were sometimes harsh, but he inspired confidence through his courage and tactical acumen. During the most dangerous assaults, Giustiniani could always be found where the fighting was fiercest, organizing counterattacks, directing artillery, and even patching breaches with his own hands. Stories of his valor spread throughout the city, boosting morale among weary soldiers and terrified citizens. He also served as a bridge between Byzantines and foreign mercenaries, helping to smooth over rivalries and coordinate defense efforts. His leadership became indispensable, and even Constantine sought his counsel in strategy sessions. Yet, beneath the surface, Giustiniani knew the odds were dire. He worked tirelessly, never allowing fatigue or fear to show, determined to give the city its best chance of survival. In the siege of Ichen Sibite Wushersan, the name Giustiniani became a byword for steadfastness and defiance. As the siege dragged on, the Ottoman bombardment took a terrible toll on Constantinople's ancient defenses. Day after day, Urban's great cannon and smaller bombards hammered the Theodosian walls, sending stone and dust flying in all directions. Slowly, the outer layers of the defenses crumbled, revealing vulnerable spots beneath. Giustiniani and his men worked frantically to repair breaches under constant fire, using sandbags, wooden beams, and even furniture to patch gaps. Each night, defenders risked their lives making hasty repairs, but the damage was relentless and cumulative. Sultan Mehmed II sensed opportunity. He ordered massed assaults against the weakened sections, sending waves of janissaries and irregular troops to storm the breaches. The defenders responded with ferocity, hurling rocks, pouring boiling oil, and using Greek fire to drive the attackers back. The air filled with smoke, screams, and the thunder of artillery. Many fell on both sides, and the ground at the foot of the walls became a graveyard of broken weapons and shattered bodies. Despite heroic efforts, sections of the outer wall finally collapsed, forcing the defenders to retreat to the inner ramparts. The loss of the outer walls was a crushing blow. Inside the city, fear spread as rumors circulated that the Ottomans were about to pour through. Yet, Giustiniani and Constantine urged everyone to hold firm, vowing that the city would not fall while any still drew breath. As the siege grew more desperate, the people of Constantinople turned to their faith for strength and comfort. Hagia Sophia, the city's grandest cathedral, became the center of spiritual life. By day and night, citizens crowded into its vast, echoing halls, lighting candles, singing hymns, and pleading for divine intervention. Priests and bishops led processions through the streets, carrying icons and relics believed to protect the city. Even those who had once doubted now joined in, united by fear and hope. Constantine XI himself attended services, kneeling with his people as prayers rose like incense to the vaulted ceiling. Outside the church, smaller chapels and monasteries also filled with the devout. Soldiers and civilians alike paused at shrines to make the sign of the cross before returning to their duties. The city's prayers were not only for victory, but for courage, mercy, and forgiveness in the face of mortal danger. The sounds of artillery and battle were, for a few moments, drowned out by the power of collective faith. Yet, even as hope flickered, some wondered if deliverance would come. The sense of impending doom hung heavy, but faith remained a vital thread in the fabric of the city's resistance. In Ichen Sibide Wushusan, prayers and faith were as much a weapon as any sword or wall. Among the Byzantine defenders' most fearsome weapons was the legendary Greek fire, a secret incendiary compound that could burn even on water. As Ottoman forces pressed their assaults and attempted to storm the sea walls and harbors, the Byzantines turned to this ancient and deadly tool. Barrels and siphons of Greek fire were prepared atop the ramparts and loaded onto small ships defending the Golden Horn. When Ottoman boats drew near or scaling ladders were raised, the defenders unleashed jets of flaming liquid, igniting attackers and equipment in terrifying bursts of heat and smoke. The effect was devastating. Ottoman soldiers recoiled in panic as their comrades and siege engines caught fire. Admiral Baltaolo, commanding the fleet, watched helplessly as ships were set ablaze, forcing his men to retreat. For a time, Greek fire gave the defenders a vital edge, buying precious days and sapping Ottoman morale. Inside the city, stories of Greek fire's destructive power boosted spirits, with mothers telling their children it was proof God was on their side. Engineers and sailors worked tirelessly to prepare more of the substance, though supplies were limited and the secret of its manufacture closely guarded. Yet, as the siege wore on and Ottoman attacks intensified, the defenders knew they could not rely on Greek fire alone. The flames provided hope and fear in equal measure, a reminder of Byzantium's ingenuity in its darkest hour. As the siege wore on, shadows lengthened not only on the walls, but within them. Espionage and betrayal became silent weapons, threatening Constantinople from the inside. The Ottomans had agents scattered among the city's refugees and foreign merchants, spies who listened for weaknesses, mapped the defenses, and spread rumors to erode morale. Sultan Mehmed II's spies bribed desperate or disaffected citizens, smuggling messages through secret tunnels and bribing guards for information about troop movements. In the markets and taverns, whispers spread that the end was near, that the emperor planned to flee, or that traitors had already thrown open the gates. Within the palace, Constantine XI held tense councils, growing wary of even trusted advisors. At times, suspected spies were arrested and interrogated, leading to public executions intended to discourage further treachery. Still, fear and suspicion spread through the city, breeding paranoia among defenders and civilians alike. On the Ottoman side, Mehmed's network of scouts and informers provided detailed maps and intelligence about weak points in the walls and about Byzantine strategies. Some renegade Greeks even offered guidance to Ottoman sappers, seeking gold or protection for their families. The invisible war of espionage made the siege more dangerous and unpredictable. While the city's walls faced cannon and assault, its heart was threatened by secrets, lies, and betrayals. In this struggle, loyalty was as precious and fragile as any stone in the ancient ramparts. The siege of Constantinople brought misery to countless innocents. As Ottoman armies closed in, streams of refugees flooded the city. Peasants from the countryside, villagers from outlying suburbs, and survivors from conquered settlements. Desperate for shelter, they crowded into churches, monasteries, and even abandoned buildings, clinging to what little hope remained. Emperor Constantine XI and his advisors did their best to provide for the displaced, ordering grain and water rations to be distributed, and opening palace granaries to the hungry. Priests and monks cared for orphans and the sick, turning religious sanctuaries into makeshift hospitals. Still, life for the refugees was harsh. Food grew scarce, disease spread rapidly in the cramped quarters, and families were often separated in the chaos. The constant sound of bombardment frayed nerves, while rumors of Ottoman atrocities in the countryside haunted the sleepless nights. In the city's squares, refugees gathered to pray, to listen for news, or to barter precious possessions for a crust of bread. Some were pressed into service, helping to repair walls or carry supplies to the front lines. Others, too frail to work, could only wait and hope. Yet, even in these dire circumstances, there were moments of kindness and solidarity. Strangers sharing food, soldiers protecting the vulnerable, and priests offering comfort. The plight of the refugees was a powerful reminder of the siege's human cost and of the city's last, fragile sense of community. As weeks turned into months, the siege of Constantinople reached new levels of ferocity. Ottoman bombardments became relentless, with Urban's great cannon thundering day and night, shaking the ground and reducing ancient towers to rubble. Fires broke out across the city as shells crashed into houses, forcing defenders to fight flames as well as invaders. Sultan Mehmed II ordered simultaneous assaults from multiple directions, aiming to overwhelm the exhausted defenders. Waves of janissaries stormed the breaches, climbing over the corpses of their fallen comrades, only to be repelled by desperate counterattacks. The air was thick with smoke, dust, and the stench of battle. Inside the walls, Giustiniani Longo and his men fought with grim determination, rushing from one crisis to the next, plugging gaps with whatever materials they could find. Women and children carried water and stones to the front lines, while priests moved among the wounded, offering blessings and last rites. The population endured hunger, thirst, and terror. Food and water ran perilously low. Some were reduced to boiling leather for sustenance. Yet spirits remained unbroken. Songs of defiance echoed from the ramparts, and each successful defense brought a flicker of hope. Both sides suffered terrible casualties. For the Ottomans, the price was high, but Mehmed would not relent. For the Byzantines, each day survived was a victory, but all knew that their strength was fading. The city trembled on the edge. Battered but still defiant, with the city's situation growing dire, Emperor Constantine XI made one last, desperate attempt to secure outside help. Letters and messengers were dispatched through secret routes to Venice, Genoa, and the papacy, pleading for reinforcements or supplies. The emperor invoked the common cause of Christendom, warning that the fall of Constantinople would leave all Europe vulnerable. Envoys faced perilous journeys, sneaking past Ottoman patrols and risking capture at every turn. Inside the city, hope flickered whenever rumors surfaced of approaching fleets. Some claimed to have seen sails on the horizon, and the clergy urged the faithful to pray for deliverance. In the Western courts, however, help came too slowly. Political rivalries, financial concerns, and fears of Ottoman reprisal delayed any meaningful intervention. A handful of ships did arrive from Genoa and Venice, but they brought only small contingents of soldiers and supplies, far less than the city needed. Within Constantinople, disappointment mingled with gratitude for any support received. Constantine convened war councils, balancing pleas for aid with harsh realities. Some advisors urged negotiating terms with Mehmed, but the emperor refused to abandon hope until the very end. As the days grew shorter and the city's supplies dwindled, the futility of diplomacy became clear. The defenders were on their own, left to face the might of the Ottoman Empire with little more than courage, faith, and fading. As the city's fate became clear, Emperor Constantine XI called for a final, unifying act of faith. On the evening before the final assault, citizens and soldiers of every class and nationality gathered in Hagia Sophia for one last Christian service. The ancient cathedral was filled to overflowing. Greeks, Latins, Venetians, Genoese, clergy, nobles, soldiers, and peasants all stood shoulder to shoulder, differences forgotten in the face of shared destiny. Priests and bishops led prayers and hymns, their voices echoing from the marble walls and golden mosaics. Incense filled the air as the congregation sought forgiveness, comfort, and strength. Many wept openly, not only for the city but for the world that was about to pass. Emperor Constantine XI knelt at the altar, humbly asking forgiveness for his sins and for the safety of his people. He embraced Justiniani, foreign commanders, and even old rivals, declaring all past grievances forgotten. The spirit of unity and courage filled the ancient church, transforming grief into resolve. Outside, the city was silent but for the distant rumble of Ottoman cannons. Inside Hagia Sophia, hope and sorrow mingled as Byzantium's last defenders prepared to meet their fate with dignity and faith. The final Christian service in Hagia Sophia became a memory that would echo through the ages, a testament to endurance and belief in the face of overwhelming odds. Overwhelm aren't ages. Deep beneath the bustling streets and towering walls of Constantinople, a network of ancient tunnels and secret passageways snaked through the city's foundations. Originally designed for water, supplies, and emergencies, these hidden routes now became vital in the final days of the siege. Byzantine soldiers and trusted civilians used the passageways to move unseen between districts, reinforce weak points, and carry messages without braving the deadly hail of arrows above. Some of the bravest defenders even launched daring nighttime sorties through these tunnels, surprising Ottoman troops at the walls with sudden attacks before vanishing again like phantoms. Emperor Constantine XI relied on these secret routes to coordinate the city's defense and distribute dwindling supplies to isolated strongpoints. But the tunnels were also a source of anxiety. What if spies or traitors led the enemy in? Guards patrolled the entrances, ever watchful for betrayal. The Ottomans, for their part, learned of the tunnels from informers and captured prisoners. Mehmed II ordered sappers to dig and probe for these hidden doors, hoping to find an unguarded entry into the city's heart. A deadly game of cat and mouse ensued underground, sometimes ending in brutal hand-to-hand combat by flickering torchlight. In the siege's final hours, the passageways became escape routes for a few, and, for others, a last line of desperate defense. The labyrinth beneath Constantinople was a place of both hope and terror, a silent witness to the struggle unfolding above. Realizing that the city's defenders were exhausted, but still defiant, Sultan Mehmed II summoned his generals for a final council of war. In the grand Ottoman tent, surrounded by maps, siege engineers, and commanders, Mehmed outlined his plan for the ultimate assault on Constantinople. The attack would be massive and relentless. The Sultan ordered the army divided into 3 waves. The first would be composed of irregular troops tasked with exhausting the defenders, the second made up of Anatolian soldiers, and the third, the elite janissaries, reserved for the decisive blow. Artillery would pound the walls continuously, aiming to shatter any remaining resistance. Special units were tasked with finding and exploiting weaknesses, especially at Kirkopota, a small and often overlooked postern gate. Ottoman sappers were instructed to intensify their mining efforts and attempt to breach the inner defenses. The navy, under Admiral Baltalolu, would coordinate a simultaneous attack from the sea. Mehmed himself addressed his troops, promising wealth, glory, and eternal fame to those who succeeded in taking the city. For the Sultan, it was not only a military campaign, but a holy mission. He urged his soldiers to fight with faith and fury. As the final plans were set in motion, the Ottoman camps bustled with activity and anticipation. Fires burned late into the night as warriors prepared for the coming storm. Both hope and dread mingled in the air. The fate of Constantinople, and perhaps all of history, would soon be decided. On the eve of the final assault, an uncanny stillness settled over Constantinople. Inside the battered city, the people sensed that dawn would bring either salvation or destruction. Emperor Constantine XI made his rounds along the ramparts, offering quiet words of comfort and gratitude to the weary defenders, many of whom had not slept for days. In Hagia Sophia, priests led a final vigil, their prayers mingling with the low murmur of anxious citizens who gathered with loved ones. Some wrote farewell letters or made their peace with old enemies, while others sat in silence, reflecting on the city's long and storied past. The soldiers sharpened swords, checked armor, and shared one last meal together. Old friends embraced, vowing to stand side by side until the very end. Among the foreign mercenaries, especially the Genoese and Venetians, resolve mixed with a deep melancholy. They knew that if the city fell, they would be far from home, fighting for their lives. On the Ottoman side, the camps crackled with energy as soldiers prepared for battle. Mehmed II rode through the ranks, urging his men to be ready for glory at sunrise. As midnight approached, a strange quiet descended. The wind rattled broken windows and fluttered the torn banners above the city. For one brief moment, all was calm, a city holding its breath before the storm. In that silence, prayers, memories, and hope mingled. Suspended on the edge of history, at the first hint of dawn, the ground shook with the thunder of drums and the blast of Ottoman artillery. The final assault on Constantinople had begun. Thousands of Ottoman soldiers surged forward in tightly packed waves, their battle cries echoing across the battlefield. The defenders, braced for the onslaught, manned the battered walls and towers. Arrows, stones, and boiling oil rained down on the attackers. As they scrambled over debris and broken barricades, Giustiniani Longo and his men moved quickly to reinforce weak points, urging the defenders to hold their ground at all costs. The first wave, irregular troops, were met with ferocious resistance, suffering heavy casualties but gradually exhausting the Byzantines. Soon after, Anatolian regulars pressed the attack, finding and widening the breaches opened by cannon fire. Smoke and dust obscured the view, and the din of battle was deafening. In the thick of the fighting, Emperor Constantine XI himself was seen on the walls, sword in hand, fighting alongside his men and rallying the defenders. His courage inspired all who saw him, even as the odds grew longer with every passing moment. On the Ottoman side, Mehmed II watched from his command post, issuing orders and sending fresh troops into the fray. He knew that victory or defeat would be decided in these desperate hours. The fate of an empire hung in the balance as dawn broke over the city. One last, titanic struggle for survival and glory. In the midst of chaos, a critical moment occurred at Kirkoporta, a small, often overlooked postern gate in the northern walls of Constantinople. Amid the confusion and exhaustion, defenders neglected to properly secure the gate during shifting tides of battle. Ottoman scouts, ever vigilant, spotted the opportunity. Quickly, a squad of elite janissaries forced their way through the unguarded entrance, spilling into the city's interior. Shouts rang out as Byzantine defenders rushed to contain the breach, but the Ottomans surged forward, seizing towers and opening the main gates from within. The news of the breach spread panic among the city's defenders and civilians. Fighting erupted in the narrow streets as Ottoman soldiers fanned out, attacking from behind the lines. Giustiniani Longo, gravely wounded during the defense, was carried away from the walls, further sapping the morale of the Byzantine troops. Emperor Constantine XI, realizing the city was lost, chose to fight to the end, refusing to abandon his post. As enemy soldiers poured through the breach, the defense collapsed in a wave of fear and confusion. So, Kirkoporta, once a minor footnote in the city's fortifications, had become the point at which a 1,000-year-old empire finally gave way. The fate of Constantinople was sealed in those frantic, bloody moments. As Ottoman soldiers flooded through the breached walls, Emperor Constantine XI Palaiologos made his final stand. Refusing to flee or surrender, he cast aside his imperial regalia so that he would die as a soldier among his people, indistinguishable from those he surrounded by loyal guards and a handful of remaining defenders. Constantine fought desperately in the narrow streets near the gate of St. Romanus. Witnesses later recalled his valor, striking down enemies, rallying the broken, and urging his companions to stand firm for the city and faith they loved. Amidst the chaos, Constantine was overwhelmed. He disappeared beneath a wave of janissaries, his body never definitively identified, but tales spread that he fell heroically, sword in hand, fighting until his last breath. Word of the emperor's death raced through Constantinople, shattering what remained of the defender's spirit. Some claim to have seen angels or visions in those final moments, a testament to the emotional and spiritual impact of his sacrifice. His end marked not only the fall of a man, but the end of a dynasty. 1,000 years of Roman rule brought to a sudden, violent close. Constantine XI became a symbol of courage and self-sacrifice, remembered in songs, prayers, and legends. For Byzantines and for generations to come, he would forever be the last emperor, faithful unto death. His fate intertwined with the city he refused to abandon, with the last organized resistance broken and the defenders in retreat or dead. Ottoman soldiers surged through Constantinople's streets. Trumpets blared and the crescent banner was raised above towers and gates, signaling the city's conquest. The janissaries led the charge, methodically sweeping through neighborhoods, seizing strategic points and clearing pockets of resistance. Doors were battered down, and terrified citizens huddled in churches or hid wherever they could, hoping for mercy or simply for the chaos to pass them by. Sultan Mehmed II, watching from his command post, soon received word that the city had fallen. He ordered his troops to maintain discipline, but in the first hours, looting and violence spread as victors and vanquished collided in the narrow lanes and grand squares. Byzantine and foreign defenders who surrendered were quickly disarmed and taken prisoner. Women, children, and the elderly sought refuge in the Hagia Sophia, which quickly became a sanctuary for thousands. The city's great bells tolled in confusion and grief, marking the end of an era. The Ottoman entry was both triumphant and tragic. A moment of glory for Mehmed and his soldiers, but one of unspeakable sorrow for the people of Constantinople. In that instant, the world changed, and the Queen of Cities passed from Christian to Muslim rule. The conquest of Constantinople unleashed a wave of chaos, fear, and grief. In the immediate aftermath, Ottoman soldiers, despite Sultan Mehmed II's attempts at restraint, began to pillage homes, palaces, and churches, Treasures accumulated over centuries were seized or destroyed, and the cries of the city's inhabitants echoed through the streets. Families were separated, and many citizens faced violence, captivity, or the loss of all they held dear. The Hagia Sophia, now a sanctuary for thousands, became a scene of both desperation and hope. Priests continued to pray as soldiers battered down the doors, eventually breaking in and seizing those inside as captives. Some Ottomans showed mercy, sparing those who pleaded for their lives or offering safe passage in exchange for valuables. No such restraint. The city's rich tapestry of art, relics, and history was trampled beneath the boots of victors intent on taking their share of spoils. In hidden corners, survivors grieved the loss of loved ones and the fall of their beloved city. Yet, in the midst of the horror, stories of unexpected kindness also emerged. Ottoman soldiers who shielded children or allowed elderly priests to go free. As the sun set over the burning city, a mournful silence settled, broken only by distant cries and the crash of collapsing buildings. For Constantinople, this was the darkest hour, a city mourning its own death, even as the world outside began to sense the scale of the tragedy. With the city conquered, Sultan Mehmed II rode to the Hagia Sophia, the spiritual heart of Constantinople. As the doors were thrown open, the vast interior, crowded with refugees and echoing with prayers, came into view. Mehmed entered, accompanied by his guards and advisors, and gazed at the soaring dome and glittering mosaics. After a moment of silent awe, he ordered that the church be spared from destruction. He signaled that it would be converted into a mosque, symbolizing the city's new era and the Ottoman victory. The Sultan ascended to the altar, where priests had just celebrated their last Christian service, and cast a handful of earth upon it as a sign of conquest. The Christian icons were veiled, and the muezzin's call to prayer soon echoed through the ancient halls, blending with the last fading hymns of Byzantium. The people inside, weary and afraid, watched as their sanctuary changed before their eyes. Some wept, others simply stared in silence, struggling to comprehend the end of a world and the beginning of another. For Mehmed, the transformation of Hagia Sophia was both practical and symbolic, a promise to make Constantinople, now Istanbul, the jewel of his empire. For the city's Christian inhabitants, it marked the loss not just of a building, but of a civilization. On the day following the city's fall, Sultan Mehmed II made his formal entry into Constantinople. Riding at the head of his guard, Mehmed paused at the battered gates, dismounted, and knelt to offer thanks for his victory. He declared the city his new capital, to be called Istanbul, and pledged to restore its glory. Citizens watched from windows and alleyways as the Sultan and his entourage paraded through the ruined streets. Mehmed's demeanor was solemn. Though victorious, he understood the magnitude of what had been gained and what had been lost. He issued decrees forbidding further pillage and ordered that churches and homes be respected. As he approached the Hagia Sophia, Mehmed gazed up at its dome, then entered to pray in the newly consecrated mosque. He announced his intention to rebuild the city, to welcome people of all faiths and backgrounds, and to make Istanbul the envy of the world. In those first hours, Mehmed walked among the ruins, speaking with his officers and listening to survivors. He promised food for the hungry and protection for the weak, seeking to calm the terrified populace and show himself as both conqueror and protector. The entry of Mehmed II signaled the dawn of a new age. The city, once broken, would rise again, but under new rulers, new customs, and a vision that would reshape history. In the days following the conquest, Sultan Mehmed II moved swiftly to establish firm Ottoman rule over the fallen city. Aware that victory was only the beginning, Mehmed summoned his top advisors, legal scholars, and military leaders to set the foundations for a new administration. The Sultan declared amnesty for those who had not resisted and appointed trusted officials to oversee the restoration of public order, food distribution, and the protection of survivors. Former Byzantine officials who pledged loyalty were given positions in the new hierarchy, while those who refused faced imprisonment or exile. Ottoman soldiers were recalled from looting, and strict penalties were imposed on any who disobeyed. The city's neighborhoods were reorganized under Turkish governance, and the first Friday prayers were held in the Hagia Sophia, now a mosque. Mehmed encouraged artisans, merchants, and scholars to settle in the city, offering incentives to rebuild homes, markets, and schools. He sent messages across his empire inviting Greeks, Armenians, Jews, and other peoples to repopulate the city and restore its cosmopolitan spirit. Taxes and laws were standardized, and a sense of cautious stability began to return. Yet the scars of conquest lingered. Grief was etched into every street and ruin. Mehmed's vision was not just to claim the city, but to revive and transform it into the thriving heart of his empire. The first steps had been taken, and Constantinople's long journey as Istanbul had begun. For the citizens of Constantinople, the days after the conquest were filled with uncertainty, fear, and profound loss. Many families were separated during the chaos, some taken as captives, others seeking loved ones among the ruins or in hastily erected Ottoman camps. Sultan Mehmed II ordered a census to account for the city's inhabitants, promising mercy to those who submitted peacefully. Some citizens were freed and allowed to rebuild their lives, while others were enslaved or sent into exile. Nobles and church leaders faced special scrutiny. Some were executed or imprisoned, while others negotiated terms of survival. The once bustling neighborhoods were eerily quiet. Churches and monasteries were converted into mosques or public buildings, while surviving clergy were allowed to resume worship in private. Many citizens, especially the Greek elite, mourned the loss of their city's independence and the end of Byzantine rule. Yet, over time, some began to adapt. Ottoman officials encouraged the return of artisans and merchants, hoping to restore the city's economic vitality. Communities of Greeks, Armenians, and Jews were given designated quarters and certain protections in exchange for taxes and loyalty to the Sultan. Life resumed slowly, shaped by both sorrow and resilience. New rules governed daily life, but the spirit of Constantinople, its stubborn energy and diversity, endured. The city's people had survived catastrophe. Now, they faced the challenge of starting anew, under unfamiliar rule. With the city firmly under Ottoman control, Mehmed II embarked on an ambitious program of transformation. His vision was to create not just a seat of power, but a vibrant imperial capital that would rival the glories of old Byzantium. Mosques, markets, and public baths rose where churches and Byzantine palaces once stood. Hagia Sophia, now a mosque, became the spiritual center of the new city, while neighborhoods were repopulated by people from across the Ottoman Empire. Turks, Greeks, Armenians, Jews, Slavs, and Arabs. Artisans and builders labored day and night to repair and expand the city's infrastructure. The ancient walls were reinforced, and new roads and aqueducts were constructed to support the growing population. Mehmed invited scholars, poets, and artists to his court, eager to foster a new golden age of culture and learning. The Sultan's policies of religious tolerance, though not perfect, allowed Christian and Jewish communities a measure of autonomy under the millet system. Spares. preserving the city's tradition of diversity. Bazaars bustled with trade, and the sound of many languages echoed through the winding streets. Yet, the transformation was bittersweet. For many, the old ways were gone forever, replaced by new customs and rulers. The wounds of conquest slowly healed, and over time, Istanbul emerged as a city reborn, an ever-changing mosaic of peoples, faiths, and ambitions. Though the empire was gone, the legacy of Byzantium endured in countless ways. Its art, architecture, and learning left an indelible mark on the city and on Ottoman civilization itself. Hagia Sophia's domes and mosaics inspired generations of Ottoman architects. Manuscripts, relics, and traditions continued to shape the city's religious and intellectual life. Many Byzantine scholars fled westward, carrying precious books and ancient wisdom to the courts of Italy and beyond. Their arrival helped spark the European Renaissance, ensuring that Greek and Roman heritage would live on. The Orthodox Church survived under Ottoman rule, led by the ecumenical patriarch, who became a symbol of resilience and hope for Christians in the empire. For centuries to come, Istanbul would remain a crossroads of East and West, a place where the achievements of Byzantium mingled with the energy of a new, dynamic empire. The tales of heroism, tragedy, and endurance from by ushering became legend, inspiring poets, artists, and storytellers for generations. Byzantium's fall marked the end of an era, but its influence echoed across the world. Its lessons of faith, perseverance, and the fragility of power would be remembered wherever its descendants journeyed. The city on the Bosphorus, once the queen of cities, had become something new, yet the memory of Byzantium lived on in every stone, every church, and every story told beneath its changing skyline. The fall of Constantinople sent shockwaves across Europe. News traveled quickly through merchant ships, envoys, and desperate refugees. In Rome, Venice, Paris, and beyond, the loss was met with disbelief and mourning. Many saw the conquest as a calamity, a warning of Ottoman might, and the vulnerability of Christendom. Pope Nicholas V called for days of prayer and fasting, urging Christian unity in the face of the new threat. Kings and princes debated, launching a new crusade to reclaim the city, though old rivalries and political distractions delayed any united response. The fall spurred fear and inspiration in equal measure. For Italian city-states, the arrival of Byzantine refugees brought a treasure trove of classical manuscripts and ideas, fueling the Renaissance. Writers, artists, and philosophers drew upon the stories of by ushering to shape their works. In the courts of Europe, diplomats scrambled to understand Mehmed II's intentions. Was the Sultan satisfied, or would his armies march further west? Ambassadors were dispatched to Istanbul, seeking peace or alliances, while some began to plan for the defense of their own realms. Yet, for all the panic and lamentation, life went on. Trade with the Ottomans resumed, and the great cities of Europe adapted to the new reality. The memory of Constantinople's fall haunted the collective imagination, serving as both a cautionary tale and a catalyst for change. In the weeks and months after his conquest, Sultan Mehmed II revealed a grand vision for the future of Istanbul. For Mehmed, victory was not only about military triumph, but about legacy, creating a city that would rival the great capitals of history. He commissioned the repair and expansion of the city's formidable walls and gates, determined to make Istanbul impregnable. Public works began on a scale unseen for centuries. Mosques, markets, schools, and palaces rose from the ruins of Byzantine grandeur. Mehmed invited people from all corners of his empire to settle in the city. Turks, Greeks, Armenians, Jews, Slavs, and others, promising safety, land, and opportunity. Religious leaders from all faiths were summoned to help govern the city's diverse population, and the millet system was refined to provide communities with autonomy and protection. Artisans and scholars flocked to Mehmed's court. New architectural marvels took shape, blending Ottoman and Byzantine styles. The city's bustling bazaars became famous throughout the world, while its libraries and schools attracted students and thinkers from east and west. Mehmed walked the city often, listening to citizens' petitions and imagining Istanbul's future. He dreamed of a capital that would embody the harmony of many peoples and faiths, a meeting point of continents, cultures, and empires. Under Mehmed's guidance, Istanbul was reborn, not only a symbol of conquest, but a beacon of hope, energy, and cosmopolitan ambition. A city for the ages. The fall of Constantinople marked the end of one era and the beginning of another. Across Europe, Asia, and beyond, the world changed in ways both immediate and profound. For the Ottoman Empire, the conquest cemented its status as a world power. Istanbul became the beating heart of a realm stretching from the Danube to Arabia, from the Mediterranean to Persia. Trade routes shifted, and the Silk Road found new life through the city's bustling harbors and caravanserais. In the west, the shock of the city's fall drove explorers to seek new routes to the riches of the east. Within decades, this quest would launch the age of exploration, with caravels setting sail for Africa, Asia, and the New World. Meanwhile, the flood of Greek scholars into Europe fueled the Renaissance, laying the foundations for modern science, art, and philosophy. Religiously, the world saw great changes as well. The Orthodox Church survived, its leadership centered in Istanbul, while the city's synagogues and new mosques spoke to the blending of cultures and beliefs. In memory and legend, the fall of Constantinople became a story retold through generations. A tale of courage, loss, transformation, new. The city on the Bosphorus remained at the center of it all. No longer Byzantium, not simply Ottoman, but a place where East meets West, past meets future, and humanity's stories intersect. The events of Byzantium still echo through history, reminding us that even in the darkest hours, cities and peoples can be reborn, carrying the legacy of the past into an ever-changing world. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable journey through the dramatic events of Byzantium, when the mighty walls of Constantinople fell and the world as people knew it was forever changed. We hope this series has not only illuminated the courage, tragedy, and resilience of those who lived through these times, but has also inspired you to reflect on the power of history to shape our present and future. The conquest of Constantinople by the Ottoman Turks was more than the end of an empire. It was the birth of a new world. In its aftermath, cultures collided, ideas flowed, and a city long revered as the Queen of Cities was reborn as a beacon for East and West. Through the bravery of its defenders, the vision of Sultan Mehmed II, and the legacy of Byzantium, the story of Byzantium remains a timeless lesson in adaptation, endurance, and hope. If you've enjoyed this exploration, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories from the crossroads of history. Until next time, may the lessons of the past guide you, and may your curiosity always lead you to new horizons.